Hey guys, if you like my videos, please like and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it, thanks. Ethan Carter had no idea why the app caught his attention. Maybe it was the sleek, minimalist design or the cryptic tagline on the store page, "See what was always there." It had only a handful of reviews, all vague. "Life-changing experience," one read. "You'll never be alone again," another said. Curiosity got the better of him. He downloaded it. When he opened iLens AR, his camera flickered to life. The screen filled with swirling colors, iridescent hues that bled into one another like oil on water. Strange, floating shapes hovered in the air, shifting and pulsing like they were alive. He swept his phone around his apartment, watching the unnatural patterns ripple against the walls and furniture. It was mesmerizing. Then he turned the camera toward his bed. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. A figure loomed over the bed. Not a person, no features, no limbs, just a dark absence, a void where something should be. A human-shaped hole in reality. It wasn't like the swirling lights and patterns. This thing was different. A presence. His fingers trembled, but he forced himself to lower the phone. The space beside his bed was empty. Ethan's skin crawled. He raised the phone again. The void remained. It stood motionless, a negative space cut into his reality. He had the strangest, most terrifying sensation that it was watching, that even without eyes, it saw him. A deep, involuntary shudder rolled through his body. He yanked the phone down, and once again there was nothing there. He forced a breath. It had to be an AR trick, some kind of programmed illusion, a gimmick. Still, as he closed the app and set his phone down, the feeling lingered. The air in the room felt different, too still. It was as if something had settled, unseen but present, just beyond his reach. Ethan turned off his bedside lamp and lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined the figure standing over him, watching, waiting. At some point exhaustion won, but even in sleep his dreams were fractured, filled with shifting colors, and the faint, suffocating pressure of something standing too close. Ethan woke feeling as though he hadn't slept at all. His limbs were leaden, his head thick with an inexplicable heaviness. The memory of the void lingered in the back of his mind, curling like smoke around his thoughts. He grabbed his phone and hesitated before reopening iLens AR. It was just a stupid app, a cheap gimmick. But what if it wasn't? Shaking off his unease, he opened the app. The swirling colors returned, hypnotic and strange. He swept the camera around his room, half expecting the void to still be there. Nothing. A shaky laugh escaped him. See? Just a trick. A bad dream bleeding into reality. Still, the unease lingered. He walked into the hallway, raising his phone as he went. The AR feed distorted slightly as it adjusted to the dim light. Colors swirled, shapes rippled. And then, a void stood at the end of the hallway. Ethan's breath hitched. It was identical to the one he had seen last night, a hole in the fabric of existence, vaguely humanoid but utterly featureless. His heart pounded as he turned the camera toward the kitchen. Another one. It was smaller, hunched, as if crouching in the corner by the fridge. Panic clawed up his throat. He lowered the phone. The hallway was empty, the kitchen empty. He turned the phone back, and the figures were still there, unmoving but aware. Ethan staggered back, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. He needed to test it somewhere else, somewhere public, outside. He hurried to the subway, hands shaking as he opened the app once more. People bustled around him, oblivious commuters lost in their morning routines. He hesitated before lifting his phone. And then, they were everywhere, dozens of them, standing silently among the crowd. Some loomed over passengers who sat scrolling through their phones, their void-like forms pressing close, featureless heads tilted as if watching their screens. Others stood in the aisles, motionless but aware. Some flickered, shifting slightly, like static breaking through a weak signal. Ethan's stomach lurched, his head spun. No one else saw them. He swallowed bile, his skin clammy. The longer he looked, the worse he felt, like something was peeling back the layers of his reality, showing him what had always been there. His nausea grew unbearable. He tore his gaze from the screen, squeezed his eyes shut, and counted to 5. When he opened them, the subway was normal again. but the sensation remained, that feeling of eyes where there were no eyes. The train doors hissed open. He stumbled out onto the platform, the app still open in his trembling hand. And then, for the first time, he saw one of the voids move, just a flicker, an unnatural, jagged movement as it turned its head toward him. Ethan nearly dropped the phone. Somewhere, deep inside, they knew he could see them now. Ethan deleted the app the moment he got home. His hands trembled as he stared at the screen, waiting for it to disappear from his phone. He didn't care if it was a hoax, a viral marketing campaign, or some elaborate prank. He wanted nothing to do with it. The app vanished. He exhaled a shaky breath and tossed his phone onto the desk. The feeling of nausea still clung to him, a sickly weight in his stomach. No matter how many times he tried to rationalize it, something deep inside told him that he had seen something he wasn't meant to see. A trick of the light? A hallucination? Then why had it moved? He tried to distract himself with TV, scrolling through shows without watching. Hours passed, his pulse settled. It was over. And then, at exactly 3 a.m., his phone vibrated. He turned his head slowly, pulse spiking. It was a notification. Island's AR has been reinstalled. A weight pressed down on his chest. That was impossible. His fingers hovered over the phone. The app icon sat there, waiting. The same swirling design. His stomach churned. He didn't touch it. He wouldn't. But then, before he could stop himself, his thumb moved. The app opened. His screen glitched, flickering. Then a new menu appeared, something he hadn't seen before. True Sight, locked beneath it, a single prompt. Do you wish to see what has always been here? His throat tightened. His first instinct was to shut the app and throw his phone across the room, but he didn't. He stared at the question, his skin crawling. The yes button pulsed, waiting. It was a stupid app, some dumb gimmick. If he tapped it, it would probably just add some glitchy overlay to the screen, right? His curiosity won. He pressed yes. The screen shuddered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the colors bled away, draining from the AR filter. The world darkened. A horrible, stomach-turning warping effect spread across his screen, distorting everything. And then, one by one, the voids turned their heads toward him. Not just one. All of them. The camera glitched. Their jagged head-like shapes snapped in his direction as if drawn by an unseen force. Some of them stepped closer. The app froze. His phone vibrated violently. The screen fractured, splitting into static lines. And then, for the first time, he saw what lay inside the voids. A mouth that wasn't a mouth. A shape that twisted and peeled open, layered with something that wasn't flesh. The screen flickered, once, twice, then snapped back to normal. The voids were gone. Ethan hurled his phone onto the bed, his breath ragged. His pulse thundered in his ears. But the moment his phone hit the mattress, the screen lit up again. And this time the camera had already opened by itself. It was pointed at his face. Ethan didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone, watching as the camera app flickered open and shut on its own. The nausea from before had settled into something worse, a certainty. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't a game. Something was watching him. At dawn, he made a decision. He needed to understand what he had downloaded, what he had let in. The App Store listing had no developer name, just a vague copyright to Ouroboros Technologies. It wasn't a name he recognized, but when he searched for it, he found a dead website. The homepage was blank except for a single symbol in the center, a ring. No, an eye. A slit-pupilled eye consuming itself, the tail curling into its own socket. Beneath it, a phrase in Latin, qui videt oculum apparit ianuum. He copied the text, running it through a translator. He who sees the eye opens the door. A cold chill slithered down his spine. Further digging led him to an obscure forum, the Unveiled Ones. Most of the posts were nonsense, ramblings about hidden truths, unseen beings, and warnings about the sighted. But one thread caught his eye. Anyone else seen them in the Islands app? His heart pounded as he clicked. The post was old, months before the app had even appeared in the store. The user described exactly what Ethan had seen, the voids, their stillness, their awareness. But the replies were worse. They notice you when you look too long. delete the app. It won't matter. They already know you. Hearing static yet? That means they're close. Ethan's skin crawled. He scrolled further. One user had dug deeper, claiming the app's interface contained an embedded sigil. A hidden glyph that, when activated, opened something. The final comment sent ice through his veins. It's not just an app, it's an invocation. Ethan's phone buzzed. His breath caught as he looked at the screen. A notification from iLens AR. You have unlocked TrueSight. Keep watching. His stomach lurched. He turned the phone face down. No more. Then, from the silence of his empty apartment, a creak, not from the floor, not from the walls, from behind him. Ethan turned slowly, dread crawling up his spine. His bedroom mirror faced him. He didn't own a mirror. His reflection was smiling. Ethan's breath turned to ice in his lungs. The mirror shouldn't have been there. It wasn't there. And yet it stood against the wall, tall, sleek, impossibly smooth, reflecting his room in crystal clarity. Too clear. But it wasn't the mirror itself that made his skin crawl. It was his reflection. It grinned at him. Ethan didn't move, but the thing in the glass did. Just a flicker, a shift that shouldn't have happened. Its teeth were too white, too sharp. Its lips stretched just a fraction wider than they should. The phone in his lap vibrated. Don't look away. His stomach lurched. His fingers twitched at his sides, itching to throw the phone, to run. But what if it moved when he wasn't looking? A slow, burning pressure filled his chest. He wanted to blink. He needed to blink. His reflection didn't. Another vibration. Don't turn around. His fingers clenched the sheets. It wasn't a reflection. It was something watching him through the glass. The thought sent a shudder deep into his bones. He took slow, careful breaths. It's just a hallucination. It's just the app messing with me. His reflection blinked, but he didn't. A choked sound crawled up his throat. His legs trembled. Move, he bolted. The instant he broke eye contact, the air rippled. A warping, skin-prickling pressure, like the room itself, folded inward. A soundless gasp. His ears registered nothing, but his mind did. A pressure, a scream behind the glass. Ethan grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and hurled it at the mirror. The moment it struck, the glass shattered, but instead of shards, the pieces bent, writhing like liquid, twisting in on themselves. He stumbled back as the reflection crawled out. Not like stepping through a door, not like climbing through a window. It folded. A human shape peeled itself from the glass, warping, skin twisting as if unmade and remade at once. And for the first time, it had eyes. Dark, bottomless pits. And they were locked on him. His phone buzzed one last time. Welcome to the other side. Ethan ran. He didn't think. His body moved on pure, primal terror. He slammed through the door, sprinting down the hallway, his breath ragged, heartbeat pounding against his skull. Behind him, the thing followed, not with footsteps, not with sound. It moved in absence, a distortion in the air, a ripple in space. He could feel it, the pressure of something that shouldn't exist forcing itself into reality. He reached the front door, nearly ripping it off its hinges as he bolted outside. Cold night air hit his face like a slap. His hands trembled as he fumbled for his phone, fingers slick with sweat. He needed help. He needed to tell someone. His phone vibrated before he even touched it. Incoming call, unknown number. His gut twisted. But his hands had already answered. A voice hissed through the speaker. Not one voice, many. A layered, garbled choir of tones like a recording played in reverse and forward at the same time. The sound hit him like a physical force. His stomach churned, his vision blurred. His knees buckled, bile burning at the back of his throat. It was speaking to him. No, it was inside him. His fingers spasmed, knuckles white against the phone. He needed to understand. His friend Mark, tech nerd, audio freak. Ethan forced himself to his feet, legs shaking. He tore through the streets, running like his life depended on it, because it did. Mark's apartment was a mess of wires, monitors, and coffee-stained notebooks. Ethan burst through the door, doubled over, gasping for breath. Mark barely looked up from his screen. Dude, you look like you saw... Ethan threw the phone on the desk. Record this. Mark raised an eyebrow, but dragged the audio file from Ethan's call into his spectrogram software. A shifting mass of jagged peaks and valleys filled the screen. Jesus, Mark muttered, this isn't even human speech. His fingers danced over the keyboard, filtering layers, isolating frequencies. The waveform warped, then flattened into symbols. A message. Mark's face paled. He typed rapidly, translating piece by piece. It's Latin, no, older. His throat bobbed as he read. Ethan leaned in, pulse thudding. What does it say? Mark turned to him, voice barely a whisper. Open the eye, open the way. The room dimmed. Not from the lights, from something outside. Ethan turned toward the window. A void stood on the balcony, watching, waiting. And then it reached forward. The window pane bulged inward like stretched plastic. Mark stumbled back, knocking over a stack of hard drives. What the hell is that? Ethan couldn't answer. His throat locked. His breath came in short, ragged gasps. The void outside the window, it wasn't just watching anymore. It was pressing into reality. The glass warped, rippling as if something massive was trying to force its way through. And then it cracked. A single hairline fracture, thin, delicate, alive. The break spread, veins of splintered glass creeping outward, pulsating like something organic. Ethan grabbed Mark's arm. We have to go, now. But Mark didn't move. His eyes were locked on the monitor. Ethan, his voice was hollow. It's not just us. The screen flickered. News feeds, forums, live streams. People were seeing them. Hundreds of reports everywhere. Shadowy figures appearing in homes, in streets, on live broadcasts. Some reports described waking up to something pressing down on their chest. Others mentioned cold spots, missing time. Some people had already vanished. The app wasn't showing the voids anymore. It was spreading them. Mark turned to him, fear tightening his features. It's a signal, a damn infection. Crack. The window shattered inward, not in shards, in folds. The void collapsed into the room, space itself peeling like torn fabric. Ethan grabbed Mark and yanked him back. The air imploded with a sickening pop, a pressure drop so intense Ethan's ears rang. The void twisted. It had arms now, longer than they should be. Fingers that split at unnatural angles, grasping, clawing. Then for the first time it spoke. A soundless command, a whisper inside their bones. We see you now. Ethan grabbed the laptop, ripped the power cord free, and smashed it into the void's grasping hand. The screen fractured in static, and the void reeled back, its form flickering. Mark scrambled to his feet. Did that work? Another sound, not from the void, from every phone in the apartment. Ethan's, Mark's, even an old burner lying in a drawer, all buzzing at once. A message filled every screen. Live stream online, 100,000 viewers watching. Ethan's stomach plummeted. The signal was growing. The more people watched, the more the voids manifested. Then came the final message, blinking in the darkness. You are the signal now. And something turned its head toward the apartment door. Outside, in the hallway, heavy footsteps, slow, coming closer, and then something knocked. The knock came again. Not loud, not forceful, just deliberate. Ethan and Mark froze. A long silence stretched between them, thick and unnatural. The window behind them still rippled, the void flickering at the edges of reality. But whatever stood outside the apartment door, that was different. Ethan's phone buzzed. A live video notification from iLens AR. Streaming now, The Truth Revealed, 1.2 million viewers. His fingers trembled as he tapped the screen. The video stuttered to life. A streamer, someone desperate for clicks, had taken it too far. The feed showed a dimly lit bedroom. Posters on the wall, LED lights glowing red. A guy in his 20s sat in front of his webcam, eyes wide, holding up his phone. The chat erupted. Holy shit, what the hell is that? It's right behind you. Bro, stop joking. Wait, what the hell? Dude, move. Ethan's stomach clenched. He could see it. A void. Looming right behind the streamer's chair. The guy didn't notice. The chat screamed at him. But the messages started to warp. The letters twisted, broke apart. New messages replaced them. Don't look away. You see us now. We see you. We see you. We see you. The streamer's face changed. His expression drooped. His pupils dilated. Then his head snapped back like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. His mouth fell open, his jaw stretching too wide, too unnatural. The camera glitched. A single frame flickered through the distortion. The streamer standing, blindfolded, mouth moving, hands slick with something dark. Then the feed cut to black. The chat died. And then Ethan's own camera turned on. the front-facing view, his own face staring back at him, and behind him, the door handle turned. A single whisper crawling through the phone's speakers. "Let us in." The door handle twisted. Ethan's breath hitched in his throat, his muscles locked, his pulse hammering so hard it felt like his ribs might crack. Mark shook his head violently. "Don't open it." Ethan wasn't planning to, but the handle kept turning, not in quick, impatient jerks, slow, controlled, as if whatever was on the other side was savoring this moment. Then click. The lock gave. Ethan and Mark backed away. The door creaked open by an inch, no further. A void of absolute darkness seeped through the gap like the absence of space itself. Then Ethan's phone vibrated. A new notification from Island's AR. "New recording saved. Play now." His fingers felt disconnected from his body as they moved on their own. He tapped the screen. The video started. The footage was from earlier that night. It showed Ethan sitting at his desk staring at his phone. Then the camera moved. Not a shift, not a bump, but as if something behind the lens had adjusted its focus. Ethan hadn't been recording. The footage played, a perfect recreation of his memory. The moment he unlocked true sight. The moment the voids turned to him. The moment he saw their mouths. But then, the footage lagged. A glitch. The screen pixelated for a second, then continued. But something had changed. Ethan in the video wasn't sitting alone anymore. A figure stood behind him. A void. Ethan's stomach dropped. He swiped to exit the video, but the footage kept playing. In the recording, the void behind him tilted its head. Then, frame by frame, it reached forward. Its fingers stretched, bending at unnatural angles. It moved toward Ethan's neck, just inches away. The video lagged again. The image stuttered, then jumped to his current perspective. The phone screen mirrored his real-world view. It showed the apartment door, slightly ajar, the rippling darkness beyond it, Mark trembling at his side, and a void. Standing right behind them. In the reflection of the phone screen, it was reaching forward. Ethan's throat locked. He could feel something breathing against his skin, a presence pressing too close. He didn't want to look, but he had to. He turned his head. The void was gone, but the closet door behind him was now wide open, and from inside, something knocked. The knock came again. Ethan's chest tightened. He could barely breathe, barely think. His mind screamed at him to run, to do anything but stand here and watch. Mark was whispering frantically, but Ethan barely heard him. His entire world had shrunk to the open closet, to the dark, pulsing emptiness inside. Then his phone buzzed, a new notification. Live broadcast starting, 5.3 million viewers. Ethan's hands shook. He turned the screen toward himself, toward the closet. And there it was, the void. No, the shape of him. A hollowed-out version of his own body, featureless, faceless, waiting. And for the first time it moved with purpose. It stepped forward. Ethan staggered back. His head swam, his vision blurred, the edges of the world warping like melting film. His legs buckled. Mark grabbed his arm. "Ethan, shut it off. Shut the damn thing off." Ethan's throat worked, but no sound came. He looked at his phone. The viewer count was rising. 6.1 million, 6.5 million. The void was feeding off them. Every eye that watched, every screen that displayed its form, it grew stronger. The air crackled. The lights in the apartment dimmed, flickered, died. Somewhere outside, car alarms blared. Dogs howled. The sky flickered. And then the void opened its mouth. Ethan's vision fractured. He dropped the phone. The screen landed face up. The live broadcast showed him. Only, it wasn't him. The Ethan in the feed had no eyes, no features, just a hollow, gaping absence, a walking outline where a man used to be. The chat exploded. "What the hell is that? Guys, he's changing, what the hell? Is this a prank? He's not moving right." His own face warped in the reflection. He tried to move. He couldn't. His fingers curled, but the movement wasn't his. His reflection in the phone smiled. The voice in his head spoke in a language he didn't understand, but he knew what it meant. "You are the signal now." The closet yawned open, endless, swallowing him whole. The last thing he saw was Mark screaming, running, and then the feed cut to static. The next morning, the app was gone, pulled from every store, deleted from every device. No trace of Island's AR remained, except for the millions who had watched and the silent, grinning shapes now standing behind them.